your seats, please. Can I first take the opportunity of asking the top table to introduce themselves, starting on my right.
My name is Jonathan Clark. I'm the policy manager for the council.
Hello everybody, my name is Lisa Harris. I'm the Director of Regeneration and Housing.
David Williams, Councillor.
Councillor Tony Newman, Whiston South. And I'm Terry Byron, the Councillor for Whiston South and Crompton, as my colleagues are. Can I just tell you the format, what we intend to do tonight? I'm going to ask Jonathan and Lisa to take you through the presentation. When the presentation's finished, I'll be taking questions from the floor. And I am looking for questions rather than, people making speeches, because we need to get out by 7:30. The room's only booked till then. So hopefully it'll be a civil meeting. I know that the issue is contentious, but hopefully a civil meeting. Okay, can I pass you over now to Jonathan and Lisa?
Thank you, Councillor Byron. First of all, thank you all very much for coming tonight and allowing us this time to update you on our local plan. The plan has been in preparation for a number of years now and has included a significant number of other stages of public consultation. The plan is a plan for the whole of the borough, but this evening's meeting will only concentrate on the Whiston and the Crompton sites that are in discussion. As I've said, the Council's been preparing the Knowsley local plan for several years and we've consulted on several occasions. The plan aims to support successful suburban townships with an attractive environment and proposes that 8,100 dwellings and 164 hectares of employment land are provided between 2010 and 2028. In previous stages of the plan, the Council proposed to give first priority to development in the urban areas, or what is otherwise called Brownfield sites. However, a public examination hearings took place in November 2013 and July 2014. And at that time, a government inspector deemed that our plan was weak in the fact that we hadn't identified sufficient land for housing development and employment development, and therefore urged us to reconsider our issues in relation to Greenbelt release. Pretty much he didn't give us many options, and therefore meant that we had no other choice but to relook at the Greenbelt and reconsider that, bringing it forward, in order to meet the longer-term development needs of the borough. As I said, at this stage of the process, the plan is up to 2028, and it is only a plan. It's not about the details of what will be built on the sites. It's more about the zoning of the land. So if some of your questions tonight of where will the entrance be or what type of housing will be built on there, we won't be able to answer those in any detail at this moment in time because that detail is not known. That would happen if and only if the local plan was adopted, and it would only happen after an actual planning application came in from a developer. There have been a series of other consultation stages, and many of you may well have actually partook or actually gave evidence at the hearings that took place on the two previous stages. As I've said, the big issue for us as a council is that we have a legal duty to make a local plan. And we have a legal duty to identify housing land and employment land for the next 5 years. And we have to do that in quite a significant amount of detail. And that means at the public examination stage, we went through each of the sites that were zoned for housing, went through what their capacity was, and went through what the actual likelihood of them being brought forward would be. So this is definitely not a decision that the council has taken lightly, and it's definitely one where we have no option but to consider the land that we are now considering. And that's why we're considering the modifications. As I said, this is called the modification stage of the local plan. Other changes of the modification stage include also affordable housing targets. The Greenbelt release isn't just in the Whiston and Crompton area. We are considering sites across the whole of Knowsley, and there's 10 sites in total. But as I say, tonight's meeting is just to consider the Whiston and the Crompton sites. The removal from the Greenbelt also doesn't mean that all of the site would be developed. So the maps that you may well have seen actually covers all of the site, but that doesn't mean that it would all be developed upon. There will be parts of those sites which would be protected for things like special scientific interest, geological sites, or undevelopable. The consultation that we're in at the moment finishes on 12 noon on the 14th of November, and it is a public consultation. The reason why we're having this event tonight is because we weren't able to answer all of the questions that people had who turned up to the event that we've had in Whiston previously. So we want to make sure that people have as much information as possible in order to make so that they're able to make their representations and they're able to actually reply to the consultation. So, you know, you may have heard that this is a done deal, or you may have heard all of those kind of words, but we would not be doing this consultation. We are going beyond our statutory duty, so the period is for longer. The methods that we're using to consult with people are beyond our statutory duty, and that means that we do want to hear people's views, and we do want to make sure that the government inspector gets the people's views of Knowsley. But it is really important that we do receive that information before 12 noon on the 14th of November. The next steps are, once we've received that information, is that we collate the information and send it off to the government inspector, and the government inspector considers that information together with the information that he's had in previous rounds of consultation and the previous examination in public hearings. The inspector will then make a decision as to whether our local plan is sound. Now, you can tell by my accent I am a Scouser, but it doesn't mean that it's sound in no Scouse term. It means whether it's legally compliant. And only at the time that the inspector is legally compliant will he then respond back to the council formally advising us that we can consider adopting the plan. If we receive that back from the government inspector, the council then has the decision-making powers to consider the plan and make the decision. I don't think there's anything in any other greater detail that I wanted to cover, as I'm sure we'll cover many of the issues in your questions this evening, and therefore we're happy to take any questions, Chair.
The plan itself is out at various places for inspection at the moment, in council offices, libraries, and on the website. What will happen at the end of the consultation period on the 14th of November is that we will collate all the responses to the consultation, and we're already getting, as you'd imagine, a lot of responses. We will gather those all together and we will send those off to the inspector. And what we'll also intend to do is put together what's called a report of consultation, and that report of consultation will be a public document, so everybody can see what comments have been made on the plan and that we have submitted to the inspector for his consideration.
Thank you, gentlemen.
If there's any consideration being given to the wildlife in the area, because in urban areas there's very little wildlife.
Chair, I can confirm that we have considered the wildlife on the sites in some detail. We have in fact commissioned a report about the wildlife, which is basically a habitat survey, and that does indeed confirm that parts of the site are ancient woodland, for example, and there are some very valuable habitats. But the value of the wildlife actually varies across the site. So some areas are less valuable, but others are more valuable. And the approach that we would take, if and when we get any actual development proposals on the site, is we'd like the areas which are more valuable for wildlife to be retained and indeed enhanced through a development.
The man with the blue jacket.
It's a general question to the inspector. Is there anybody here who wants to get rid of valuable Greenbelt? Can I have that again? Is there anybody here who wants to get rid of valuable Greenbelt? No. Is it yes or no? I think that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a legal duty as a council in order to provide land to be developed for housing. We have to choose that land and we can't ignore that obligation. and therefore, whilst we recognise that that's not a popular decision, and we recognise that this isn't something that may be welcomed locally, the need for housing, the need for employment land in the borough has to be met, and the council has a legal duty to do that. The council didn't take that decision lightly. In fact, we fought as officers tooth and nail against that decision. We presented days and days of evidence to say about development in the urban area, and unfortunately the government inspector said that we had to reconsider that.
Well, give them that message back then.
Okay, and at the moment the town council views is to agree with the residents and oppose the Greenbelt.
Yeah, well done.
It has that need, but I wondered whether the figure of 8,100 was a figure that the government had imposed, and if not, how you came up with that figure, when we know there's obviously Liverpool and St Helens and various areas that could possibly provide housing. You also talked about in previous there have been all these previous consultations, but we also know that in the previous consultations they were flawed. That was sort of accepted at the hearings, and it was during those previous consultations that people could actually say very generally what they wanted for the borough. It was at that point you could say, no, we don't want the Greenbelt taken away. At this point, apparently we can't say that anymore. So people weren't given that chance back then. So this isn't just another consultation. People didn't have that chance back then. Also, the third thing is, oh yeah, you said it's a big if, and I just wonder how big of an if really is it? At a recent Whiston Council meeting, Lisa, you said that in the last 5 years, more Greenbelt had been lost than in 25 years previously. So it seems like quite a big possibility to me.
Just to answer the first question about the housing numbers, the requirement that the government sets is for the local plan to meet what's called the objectively assessed housing needs of the borough. Now, saying what that figure actually is quite a complicated exercise, but basically the council has done a number of studies, one of which was a strategic housing market assessment and various other studies. And also we've looked at things like the government's population and household projections, which are very important documents as evidence base for us. And the figure that we've come up with of 8,100, which is from 2010 until 2028, is in fact what we think on the basis of the evidence is the correct figure. And to date in the hearing process, the inspector on the basis of the evidence he has so far, has actually agreed with that figure. It is a balance though, because obviously we don't want to provide too many houses, but we don't want to provide too few either.
If I can answer some of the other points that have been made. The issue of previous consultations being flawed, I would have to disagree, I'm afraid. The planning inspector didn't make that finding in either of his reports that he's given us, interim reports that he's given us to date. The areas he specifically gave us areas to relook at, and they're the areas that we are consulting on now. And those areas include Greenbelt release, affordable housing target, prioritisation of financial and non-financial contributions from developers, removing the flexibility of safeguarded land in the noted village area, and as I said, and the proposal about the Greenbelt release. So he did not find that our consultation was flawed previously, so I would have to take an issue with that.
Whether or not the inspector found it was flawed, Jonathan, you and I are both at public meetings where it was accepted that sackloads of mail with those documents in were found either dumped or dropped, and people in the vicinity, people all around Cronton Quarry, for example, did not get those early documents. So perhaps the inspector thought it was okay, but do you think that's okay?
We don't.
And just as an example, at what was called the preferred option stage of the plan in 2011, we printed 70,000 leaflets, which we posted out via the Royal Mail. to residential properties in the borough. And so we have no firm evidence that the Royal Mail dumped those in the hedgerow. So no, we haven't, because we have no actual evidence that they dumped them in the hedgerow. And we had a previous, and we also had a previous mail out of leaflets as well. And also, we do know, for example, that from the consultation stage in 2011, we had quite a considerable response, including a petition with nearly 800 signatures on from Whiston. So clearly, we felt that there was certainly evidence that people had received the leaflets at that stage. And also the people who responded at that stage, we have re-notified at subsequent stages, as well as at this stage, the people who live within 200 metres on the site.
The next one I've got is the gentleman in the Hollister jacket over there. Now, you've had your go. Can I ask the man, you've had 2 goes. Can I ask the man in the Hollister jacket? Excuse me. Man in the Hollister jacket.
This lady speak first.
Go on.
Let this lady speak first.
Are you going to go for her?
No, I'm not. I'm just asking you. Let this lady speak first.
She's had 3 goes and trying to be as
Are their
democratic
questions
as
difficult? Are their questions difficult?
Come on. Make your point, please.
Does anybody want this lady to speak?
Okay. Lisa's got an answer. Okay.
Yeah, I think everybody, the lady asked a question in relation to the if question, is it going to happen and is it a big possibility? The issue there is that this is the really later stages of consultation in this plan. So therefore, we have gone through a number of years before we've got to this stage. At this stage, consultation responses do need to be on the legal soundness of the plan, or whether there is any new evidence that hasn't been taken into account previously. It's not a foregone conclusion that the plan will be accepted either by the government inspector. I have no evidence to suggest that's true, but what I would advise is that at this stage of the plan, any consultation responses that they receive, they give greater weight to if they are based on planning issues and whether they're based on legal soundness issues of the plan. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Lisa.
You said before that you mail shot 5,000 people, and a lot of people within 200 metres of the land. Well, I live next door to the land, and I wasn't mail shot. And I'd like to do a quick slow poll. Was anybody else in this room mail shot by the council? I put it to you that all these people in this room were mail shot by the volunteers going around putting letters in their houses telling them about the meeting tonight.
Just hang on. Ray, I think you're next.
Hello, I'd like to start by asking a question to Jonathan. He will remember that the hearings attended, but he made a comment about early release of Greenbelt. And his comment was that if we release it early, then that will stop the development of Brownfield sites. The first question I've got is, what has changed the council's mind on early release? Because as I understand it, we're now talking about 2015. That's my first question. Do you want to come back on that one, Jonathan?
Yes, I mean, the answer to that one is that I think you're referring to the first set of hearings which took place in November of last year. Basically, at that point, the council's case was that it wanted to prioritise the development of Brownfield land before any of the Greenbelt sites came forward. And our view, as Lisa said in her initial presentation, was that we wanted to ensure that the regeneration of the Brownfield land was further advanced before any of the Greenbelt sites came forward. The problem that we had was that the inspectors' interim findings following those hearings were basically that the Brownfield land wasn't coming forward sufficiently quickly in order to meet the short-term development needs of the borough. And this is a reference to the government requirement for the council at all times to maintain a 5-year supply of readily deliverable development land. That's land that's free of all constraints and viable for development. We do have brownfield sites which are coming forward, but they're not coming forward at the rate that's required. And that's for that reason the inspector basically said that we need to rethink the plan, and the council has rethought the plan via the modifications that we are now consulting upon. And the modifications are basically that instead of being reserved for very long-term release, that the Greenbelt sites would be actually allocated for development within the plan from when it's adopted. So the plan would be adopted in 2015, so at that point the sites would be removed from the Greenbelt and allocated for development.
Jonathan, can you confirm the area of the Brownfield then that is not being developed?
I can confirm the capacity of the Brownfield land that we've got in the estimated capacity for dwelling units, which is just over 5,000 dwellings, but that is the total capacity, and only a portion of that is actually readily available for development within the first 5 years. The inspector's findings, this is his interim findings document from January 2014, found that of that total brownfield capacity, the total capacity is 5,222, right? Of that, 2,309 is deliverable within a 5-year period, and that 2,309 figure falls short of the figure that the council requires to be immediately available for development within those 5 years. That's the problem that we're trying to deal with.
So am I right then to understand that we've actually got brownfield sites that quite easily cope with the amount of houses you're talking on the Greenbelt that you want to do? Albeit over a long period of time, etc.
I think the issue is that that's exactly the case that the council officers put forward to during those hearings.
But Jonathan did that.
Absolutely, no, that was the case that the officers fought very hard to try to win, and we give significant amount of evidence during the hearings to try to prove that case. Unfortunately, the inspector's interim findings didn't find in our favour. On that basis, they found in favour of actually releasing the Greenbelt.
So we need to say that the inspector has forced Knowsley to bring forward the release of the Greenbelt to 2015.
Yes, in order to meet our legislation, which is our housing supply.
I'd like to go on to density. And if you look at the a lot of people have seen this, these are the ones that have been picked up. Yeah? Now if you look at that density there, Jonathan, you're quoting 1,503 dwellings. Now, as I understand it, when we're looking at SD32, sustainable development, you have quoted on a number of occasions that the average density will be 30 dwellings per hectare. Now, as far as I know about averages could be less, can be more. If you also then apply SD32, which says you can only develop 75% of the area, 75% of 110 is down about 80 where I went to school. If you then work out 30 dwellings per hectare, 30 times 80, do you want to do the sum, Jonathan? You'll find it's over 2,400 houses. So why is it this form here is telling us 1,500?
Yes, the reason for that is that in looking at these sites, we've, as Lisa said in her presentation, not all of the sites are in fact developable in our view. And for example, as I mentioned earlier, this particular site has some areas of valuable woodland on it. It has areas of existing open space, such as the playing field and the
that's the 25% that I've already knocked off.
No, it's not. No. What we've done in this, to come up with the 1,500 figure is we've taken out the parts of the site which we don't think are likely to be developable, and then with the rest of it we've applied the 75%. I think that's correct.
Should they stay in Greenbelt then?
Sorry?
Should those areas stay in Greenbelt?
The areas which aren't developable within the site, such as the areas of really valuable woodland, for example, if the plan is adopted in its current form, they would all be removed from the formal Greenbelt status, but that doesn't mean to say that they would be actually developed, because they would still retain protection as wildlife sites, for example, which also protects from development. It's just the planning terminology, really.
The point I'm trying to get to is the fact that we're actually misleading the public with the information that was announced. Now, what I'd like to refer to, and I'm going to give an example of what I believe is an example of the misleading the public. If you look at the Housing Growth Technical Report, the examination document CR01, table 10.1, Greenbelt locations, residential capacity, I claim Derby site as a potential residential capacity for 131 dwellings. But my information is that Knowsley gave outline planning permission for 207 dwellings on that site, even though the site is still in Greenbelt.
I can answer that one. You are correct. The Bank Lane site in Kirby was put forward. The numbers are a guideline only, and therefore we would still have to consider applications as they come in, and there would have to be planning grounds on which we can refuse those applications when they come in. I don't want to add anything further to that. The Bank Lane site in Kirby did go through the planning process, and there were very few, if any, if I recall, objections to the development on that site.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is that in the core strategy, the information that the public have got, you're actually quoting 131 dwellings. So the information that the public have got to make their decision or what will affect their opinion is inaccurate, is the point I'm making.
And that's the difference between us as the council and what we'd like to see on the site and the owners and developers of the land. I'm afraid that that's the planning process in this country.
I'm glad you've mentioned the developers, because going back to the first hearing, Jonathan, I'm sure you were aware of the fact that the developers were actually talking 30 to 40 dwellings per hectare, because they actually want to get the density up.
Just to come back on that, I mean, just in terms of the capacity of the site, the actual policy that's in the plan that we're putting forward is that this is for the policy SU2C in the plan document for the site south of Whiston, is that the land would be allocated for new housing development comprising approximately 1,500 dwellings. Now, if a developer were to subsequently put in a planning application for more than that, obviously the council would need to consider the application, but it would obviously be more than what the plan is actually saying is needed on the site. So that is a factor that we have to take into account in any such application, really. And on the point about density, the average density that we've applied of 30 dwellings per hectare is just an average, because any development that comes forward may be less than that or maybe more, but we would have to consider any application on its merits.
Okay, Reyes, you don't. You had a good go.
Well, I've got a few more questions. I'd like to leave them till later and let other people.
Okay, thanks, Ray. Thanks.
At the very beginning you said the site that's proposed here, it doesn't necessarily mean that that whole site is going to be developed, and areas of special interest will be protected. So my question is, if you've done your habitat surveys and your sustainability survey, and you've got a good understanding of the areas that need to be protected, why aren't they ring-fenced on the plan that's proposed here today? Second question goes to Jonathan. Jonathan, you mentioned about brownfield sites being viable for development. If you look at, for example, the old Highton Leisure Centre in Roby Road, I will limit it to 2 questions. But you look at the old Highton Leisure Centre on Roby Road, that's been demolished, it's been flattened, it's been cleared for well over 2 years. It's got service lines in place. Is that not viable for development, or is it because it's not lucrative for development? And while I've got the microphone in my hand, I'd just like to take this opportunity to say, unlike Knowsley Council, we recognise that not everybody is digitally included and has access to the internet. Not everybody can make sense of some of the documents that are heavily, jargon heavy, that have been submitted in the public domain. We will next Saturday, on 1st of November, open up St Nick's Church between the hours of 12 and 6 to offer a drop-in to everybody in Whiston. Come along, we'll help you fill in your forms. It'll be done on an individual basis. We'll help you work through some of the documents that have been submitted in the public domain. And all we ask is that you bring the 50-60p to cover the cost of postage. We'll help you, we'll have the envelopes, we'll support you through that.
Thank you.
If it's okay with the speaker, you could probably swap those questions over, because the first question probably more of a technical nature, and the second question I can answer in relation to the land. So I'm going to hand you over to John to ask the first part.
The first question was about why we haven't ring-fenced the valuable site, the bits of the site that we might want to protect from development. And this is simply about the sort of designation of the site, really, because if you're moving the Greenbelt boundary, the government requirement is that the new boundary should be generally to hard features on the ground, such as roads or motorways or railway lines. So if you had a kind of, block of cheese effect of having holes in it, that's something that the new boundary wouldn't really meet the government requirements, if you see what I mean. But what I would stress is that any development on this site, we are saying, should be subject to a complete master planning exercise, which would identify areas of the site which must be retained. And that wouldn't necessarily just be the existing ancient woodlands. It might also be that we wanted the developers to lay out a green space network within the site, for example, that would be protected. And it's not possible at this stage to identify where all those areas might be.
You said you'd done it. You said you'd done it already.
So, can I answer the second part of your question, which is in relation to the Roby Road site, which is the former Highton Leisure Centre site. That is a site that's actually owned by Knowsley Council, and we are in discussions at the moment, in a competition actually, to get that site developed in partnership with another 6 sites across the borough. As part of our evidence, in order to stop the Greenbelt release, we put forward the fact that the council was actively trying to actually encourage development on Brownfield sites, not just leaving it to the market to decide. And the council will be considering that development in December of this year, and we would hope to see development starting next year.
Thank you. Peter?
Sorry, can you stop me today then? If that's the case, the Brownfield sites are almost at the cut to go ahead, and that Greenbelt stuff will not be delayed to Brownfield.
The planning inspector didn't accept our evidence on that point. That's the point that we lost.
And I live backing on to the land that's going to be released from the Greenbelt in South Whiston. To me, the main thing it hinges on is the whole core plan, is stopping the land being released from the Greenbelt. Whiston Town Council policy is to oppose all building on Greenbelt land. I don't know what Knowsley Council's policy is, but if they're a bit more forward-coming, opposing the Greenbelt over the last 3 years, while this consultation's been going on, I haven't seen any action at all from Whiston Town Council. Nothing at all. No one's knocked on my door and asked me what I think about the Greenbelt being released. They've been very lax in their attitude towards this problem. And I think, really, you want to start pushing a bit more. That's my opinion on the release of the Greenbelt land.
I think I said before, Peter, that Whiston Town Council have actually stated that they oppose the Greenbelt position. 3 of the councillors on the top table are also Whiston Town councillors, so we were part of that decision to oppose it.
That's correct. It's actually the policy of Whiston Town Council. It has been for 3 years. I don't think anyone was aware of that, because all the way through this, I've been involved for 3 years in consultation, which is basically a box ticket exercise, smoking mirrors. To be honest with you.
Can we just add though, Peter, that while Whiston Town Council's position is, as I've stated, Knowsley Borough Council are the overall controllers of the planning commission, so that while Whiston Town Council have an opinion, they don't make the decision on the land. That's Knowsley.
Well, I don't think Whiston Town Council be forceful enough in making that opinion heard, and I think Knowsley Council as well. You're saying that you're opposed to the land coming out of the Greenbelt. That's not obvious to me. It's not obvious to the people in this room. You're the people that we elect to look after our interests. We've told you that we don't want this land coming out of the Greenbelt over many years. Yeah. And the way you've approached it is lacking, in my opinion.
I think that Lisa and Jonathan explained the situation before. Can I just ask Lisa or Jonathan to explain the situation, why and how the Greenbelt land is going to, because they did say it before, but just for people who didn't catch on, it wasn't the decision of Knowsley, it was the decision of the coalition government that decided to sell Greenbelt land.
Don't need to make that again. Why are you killing time?
Because that was the question he asked.
Yeah, Peter, you don't want, you've already heard that. What do you reckon?
Well, I don't agree with it at all. It's not too late now. What I'm saying is, it's not too late now. Whiston Town Council has got to be more active in opposing the land coming out of the Greenbelt land. It shouldn't be up to this lady to be holding meetings in St. Nick's Church, advising people how to fill in forms. That's your job. You should be doing that.
Take your point. Okay. I've got 3 more speakers and then I'll ask people to raise their hands again.
I haven't finished yet. Well, that's the outline of the arguments as I see it. Now, what we're looking at is building on the Greenbelt lands. Now, historically, I don't want to go back too far, but in my living memory, I've seen land come out of the Greenbelt. I've seen land come out of the Greenbelt in Stockwood Village. I've seen it in Mosscroft. I've seen it in Crossford Park. I've seen it in Dickers Lane. And what did he do? They built the houses. There's no infrastructure in place. There's no employment, and all you're doing is increasing the circle of destruction around Liverpool. You're going further and further out, and it's doing nothing for it's doing nothing for nobody. There's loads of brownfield sites. The council's aware there's loads of brownfield sites. Don't be telling us that you can't build on them. Build on them. It's your job. That's what you're there for. You tell the government that you want to build on the brownfield sites.
We were having a public hearing for 5 days and we told them 5 days.
Because it's not a Greenbelt yet. You carry on selling them.
I think there are some people in the room who were there during that public hearing and can bear evidence to the fact that that's exactly what we did tell them. The important thing to say here is that the council are not building these properties. The council don't own this land. We gave evidence exactly that, opposed to the fact of Greenbelt and saying that we should do the regeneration and building on the area. As I've said, that's why we're holding these meetings tonight. That's why the members arranged this meeting this evening, to make sure that people had the facts in order for you, the public, to actually respond to the consultation based on housing, planning and more. And that's what we're trying to do, is to arm you with the information in order for you to respond. But the council has a legal duty. We don't have a choice in the matter, we have a legal duty to comply.
Sorry. I'd like to ask this question. I asked this question at the last event and I directed it to Senior Planner Brian James. He couldn't answer my question. So, with the proposed 1,503 properties, how many people does the council think that will bring into the area with those properties?
Just to clarify, how many people will live in those properties?
So 1,503 properties, how many people do those the council envisage
number of people or the population, it works on the basis of household projections.
Infrastructure for the surrounding area, do you not have an idea? Does the council not have any idea of the number of people that could be new to the area? Because you've spoken about, you've got objectives that have been measured by an external company about how far health centres are and things, and how you will create or supply services and things, and health centres and doctors and gyms. So bearing that in mind, you don't know. Does that mean you don't know how many people will come to the area?
We couldn't say in X amount of properties there will be X amount of people living in them. No, we don't know. What we can say is that the population projections moving forward over the next 15 years is what we've based our evidence on. And that is then based on the household numbers. Households are becoming smaller, so in the past households may have been on average 3 or 4 people, and our households are much smaller than that, and therefore there are more properties needed in order to cater for those households. But the actual issue about the number of people will be on the population projections and the census projections that we have provided in the actual statistical data of the government.
So you can't answer the question.
I can't give you an exact number. We could supply you with the evidence base that we actually provided.
So I too what I did as a senior planner, and I answered the question myself. So I would predict that it would bring another 4,000 people to the area. The next question that I asked the senior planner at the last meeting that he also couldn't answer was, where are these people going to come from? And he indicated that it's not as if we've got a list of people knocking on our doors buying houses. So where are those 4,000 people going to come from?
Population projections would be for the existing population growth of the existing Knowsley population, and then it would also be for households formed outside of the in Knowsley area who we would like to attract in. Growth in Knowsley from the Liverpool City region area and then from the northwest. Across the area there is a population growth, and all of the local authorities have to actually work together in order to meet that population growth. In Knowsley we do have an issue where our population has reduced, and however our number of households has still increased, and we, in order to make sure that we remain sustainable and we're able to provide the services to the public and to the residents that are living in Knowsley at the moment, that's why we need to make sure that we become a popular place and an attractive place to live.
So can you tell me why my original question to the senior planner of the council, why he couldn't answer that question?
I think it's probably on the basis that they couldn't give you exact numbers, but they could have told you that they would base it on the population and the census.
There was a question of where they were coming from, he didn't know.
I think the issue is that because we don't know who these people are, and this is about zones.
So you don't know?
I don't know whether Mrs. Wiggins from somewhere is going to move. That's probably at the next level, because we don't know the type of development that's going to be built on these sites. I think that's an impossible question for any officer to answer, if I'm perfectly honest.
I've just got one more question, please, and it goes back to the leafleting. And again, I've got an email here that I asked the question that he didn't know, but he responded by email. The number of properties in Whiston North and Whiston South is 6,658. The number of properties that received information about this proposal was 1,411. Why does Knowsley Council think that this is acceptable and appropriate to just leaflet that percentage of the community? And, sorry, a second point to that, does Knowsley Council think that it's not going to development, or the proposal is not going to affect people beyond 200 metres?
We think at previous stages of the consultation we sent leaflets out to every single household in the borough, so everybody would have been actually contacted at that point in time. We took a decision that within 200 metres of the sites to leaflet and send direct mail shots to, because they will be the most affected. Not that the other people won't be affected, but those living closest to the sites will be the most affected.
Because we have a cricket pitch, we have people who walk dogs, we have anglers who don't just come from 200 metres within the site. So what impact?
As I said, most affected in
that should not affect the liable.
But we then went and met our more than our statutory duty by doing site notices, public notices in the press. We've done press releases, we've done radio releases, and we've made sure that people knew about it. Anybody who's objected before, we've contacted directly. So if there was an angling club or there was a specific special interest group, we've contacted them directly if they've expressed an interest previously. So we have met our statutory duty and exceeded our statutory duty in this area.
But to just have a yes or no answer, does Knowsley Council think that leafleting 1,411 properties out of 6,658 properties is that acceptable? Just a yes or no for the leaflets.
I can't answer a yes or no answer to that question, I'm afraid. I'm an officer of the council. That was the decision that we took in order to do that. We did that across the borough. So whilst in Whiston that was 1,411 people, across the borough that was over 5,500 people.
I'm just asking about Whiston, that was the question. Who would be able to answer that question? Anyone on the panel?
The decision was taken that that was the consultation method that we'd use, and therefore it was thought to be appropriate.
At the town council meeting, that as the noted population grows, there will be need for more houses, and as the council predicts a rise in the noted population of 1,800 to 228. Now, it was also said that the council based this on the best possible evidence. The council also said the evidence shows that the population has declined constantly over the past 50 years from 172,000 in the 70s to the current population of 145,000. Your figures?
Not your figures.
Council figures?
Yeah, that's correct. As I mentioned previously, the households, actually, the number of households, the size of households has decreased, and therefore the need for actual properties has increased. Also, it's a belief of the council that we want to grow our population. We don't want to continue the decline of the population. To continue decline of the population will put pressure on the actual services that can be delivered.
Was it not to do with the band, council band?
Sorry,
you want to
say
higher properties, you said that your council office meeting.
One of the intentions of the council in actually developing housing is to develop a mixed economy of housing. So housing for all, be that higher by council tax banded properties to lower council tax banded properties, from expensive properties to buy to social homes that can be rented. The idea is to provide housing for all.
It was also said by council officers at the town council meeting last week that the council want people who work in Knowsley to live in Knowsley. Can I ask you how many council officers here tonight actually live in Knowsley?
I can't say where my officers live. I don't live in Knowsley.
How many do?
I don't think that's really something that is relevant.
Does anyone here think it's relevant?
What I would say is that we want to make sure that the residents of Knowsley have employment and housing opportunities.
Yeah.
You got another?
I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but you won't answer us. What we emailed you for 2 weeks. When are we having our meeting?
As I've mentioned previously, I'm happy to discuss that matter because it's not related to...
But you won't. Once this meeting's over and no one's listening, 2 weeks you put us off now.
So this is not a matter that's related to Whiston or Brownfield, and therefore...
Does anyone here care if we get a meeting like this? We're all in the same boat here. We all care about the people. We all want everyone equal to our meetings. We want ours. You set up a shambolic one 2 weeks ago. Same as you done here. Same as you done here in the corridor. It wasn't good enough. And I'm asking you now, in front of people, when are we getting our meeting? I've set up a venue for you, I've already done that. And you knew that last
night.
night.
This meeting is to discuss Whiston and Brompton, and I'm happy to discuss dates with you previously after the meeting.
Does anyone mind if we get an answer now?
Can I just let you know that the meeting tonight is about Whiston and Brompton. If you want to ask a question about a particular issue that's not related to this.
Yeah, and one of the things that we would look to do is for any development on the land and on the sites to bring forward an element of affordable housing. Now the percentage of that the council wants to bring forward is in the region of 25%. However, that would be subject to viability. Now viability is about whether development on the land could sustain, could pay for that affordable housing, almost a subsidy for the affordable housing. tonight are that it will be 25% on Greenbelt land and up to 10% in the Brownfield areas.
Actually, a couple of my questions have already been asked, but the one I do want to know, Mary, right on at the beginning, you said you had no choice but to give Greenbelt land away. Right at the beginning, you had no option to say. There's always an option. If you say you have to leave that land, we're going to have absolutely no planting this time, that will stop it. But you don't see yet an answer to this guy in London somewhere, this magic man, this inspector. I thought you work for us, not for him. And if you don't work for us, what are you doing on Knowsley Council?
Planning policy framework, and that's the new planning legislation that governs planning issues in the land. As part of that planning policy framework is the new housing targets in relation to land supply, and that's what the council has to comply with. The government inspector ensures we are complying with that, and that's what the hearings actually is. We don't have an option on which laws of the land we choose to comply with and which we don't choose to comply with. We have to comply with the law. We're breaking the law.
Now, initially, going back before the Sustainable Development Plan, it was going to be developed as a country park, and it would have links access from Statmore's along the old mineral railway line and across the newly extended bridge, which has never been opened, and that would lead through to a country park. Now on the plans that we see, we find that part of that land is down for industry. And in the meeting the other night, it was said that the type of industry it would be distribution centre, warehouse, the usual low-paid employment facility. We've got umpty-nine empty places up in Kirby, industrial estate, Highton industrial estate, Prescott, are all empty. And even on Fallows Way in Whiston, we've got 2 distribution centres completely empty, and we've got 3.6 acres of industrial land there that's been up for sale, ready for development, for industry, for some time now, 2-3 years, and still nothing. Why do we need that industry and what we should have been a country park?
Sort of subject to employment uses and industry. As with housing, really, the council's case with the plan that it submitted to the government was that we wanted to give priority to the existing brownfield sites, because as you correctly say, there are sites, for example, within Knowsley Industrial Park, within Highton Industrial Park as well. But we discussed those sites with the inspector in the first set of hearings, which was November of last year, and the conclusion that he came to, and this is set out in his interim findings document of January 2014, is that the range and choice of employment sites that we've got within the existing urban areas of the borough isn't sufficient to meet the needs for employment. And that's because it's about providing a range and choice for potential inward investors, including larger sites, for example. And just on the site of Cronton Colliery, I just want to clarify that the proposal within the plan is a dual allocation for employment and the country park. So we're not losing the country park proposal. That is in the local plan. The area that's covered by the allocation, though, is larger than the area that's got permission for the country park, and that's so that it can include an employment use as well as the country park.
Is this Peel Holdings? Is it?
I have no knowledge that Peel Holdings have any interest in this site.
Lisa, you said that this whole plan was built on the needs of the area. Yeah? And when I heard you talking before, you were talking about attracting people to these houses that we're going to build. So are we going to build houses based on the needs of the area, or are we going to try and attract people into the area? In which case, why are we going to give up our Greenbelt?
One of the issues that Knowsley has is that we have, what tends to happen is that a lot of economically active residents move out of the area, and therefore what we would like to do is to retain those people in the area. So when people are ready to buy their first home, or when people are looking for a place to live, often they decide to move out of the Knowsley boundary and move to our neighbours. And the aim of this plan is to retain those people to live in Knowsley. So there would be new households that are being formed that we would like to keep.
Well, surely, if you're going to give up the Greenbelt and people are seeing all this going on, they're going to want to move out, aren't they? So it's really going to be like stressful situation. You know, if I was one of these people who are living on the edge of that, and it is a lovely area, and it's, you know, it's got lots of wildlife and everything else. I think I would like to move away.
I think one of the issues in Knowsley is Knowsley was a very small conurbation of 4 or 5 villages, and Knowsley's history is about being expanded, and this is, I suppose, the next stage of expansion of our urban area. So probably a lot of the homes that people live in now probably were on Greenbelt at one point in time or other, and what we're trying to do is provide for the next generation who want to live in Knowsley.
So it is based on needs, and it's not built on just attracting people from outside?
No, it's based on the needs of the borough. All the consultation responses will be sent to the government inspector, and he will look at all of them, and therefore he will base his judgment on that. But as I said before, what I would say is that they do need to be based on planning. He's a planning inspector, he will consider planning issues, and he will consider legal issues, so that's why it needs to be based on those kind of things.
Okay, thank you.
The man has just asked me to read this one. Is this fair, and shouldn't the council be giving the public longer to put together their objections?
We are given the consultations for an 8-week period, and we statutorily actually only have to provide 6 weeks in order to respond at this stage. I think whatever period of time, people would always find that was difficult and challenging.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask about a few questions there. Firstly, has anybody given any thought to the sheer weight of traffic that's going to come into the area from possibly 4,000 people coming into the area, the pollution? I work in Whiston Hospital myself, as that lady does, and I see the sheer weight of people in there daily, on trolleys, waiting for hours on end in A&E departments. How many more people in the area do you need for that place to go under? Also, the local schools. I've got a 2-year-old daughter. She is going to be struggling in the future to get a place in a school. A lot of the people in this area are getting second, third choice schools for their children. Some of them are having to travel far away for that as well. Also, what is our local elected Member of Parliament going to do to this situation?
You've got to find it first.
Thank you.
Just to deal with the first point about the traffic impact. The council has undertaken a number of studies of the transport impact as part of the local planning process, and they're available as part of the evidence. We've also consulted all the transport authorities. So, for example, there's a body called the Highways Agency, which is the body which is responsible for maintaining the free flow of the motorways and the motorway junctions. They've not objected at any point to the plan, and it's difficult for the council to maintain an objection on traffic grounds if that's the case. But it is also the case that as part of any planning application, the plan wording makes it quite clear that the developer would need to do a full transport study to support any planning application, which would need to show exactly what any mitigation measures that are needed. So, perhaps improvements to the highway network, or exactly how the site would be accessed, and the phasing of the development to make sure there isn't an
actually from the floor. This is to follow on, really. I mean, when you talk about the decline of the population in Knowsley, looking at the demographics of it, I worked at ICC Cables for 30 years. 15,000 people were employed on that site. We've now got a retail park. We've got Tesco taken over the world. There's a lot of zero-hours contracts around. So you talk about employment. So the only people you've got to get actually coming into the area for the employment point of view are basically the small to medium enterprise companies, the micro companies. They're the companies that are going to come in. So what's going to happen? The people that are going to move into the area are going to have to travel. And to travel, they're going to need a car. So the gentleman raised the point before about the traffic situation. I don't see anybody from the Highways Commission who in the Harbour Road, where we have sometimes congestion for the motorway problems that we've got. I came out to Windy Harbour Close this morning, and I had to turn left, go down Knowsley Avenue, because I couldn't get out of the close. What's it going to be like when we actually get all of these junctions coming in? I got told a couple of weeks ago, by the way, that there's actually going to be a mini roundabout close towards the junction of the M57-62 corridor. So what's going to happen to this health and safety situation? You go through Whiston Village now, you can't even get in the car park. Tesco have actually moved into Whiston Village. You can't even get in the car park. And I see people walking across that car park with young children. Winter time, I can see cars reversing out. There's an accident waiting to happen. Are you going to answer that when he does? And finally, this so-called magic man that the gentleman talked about before, the government inspector, I think really it's a case tonight and not shooting the messenger. How are we going to have the opportunity to speak to the government inspector? Because I think all of these people deserve that right.
Taking the first question first in relation to the traffic and travel impacts, they would be considered at the time that a planning application came forward, and there would have to be mitigation required at that time in order to mitigate the impacts to the surrounding area of any development. And therefore, any plans that you've seen about mini roundabouts and things like that are not related to this development, is not related to the zoning of this land at all. I have no idea what the plans are, but if there are any rumours out there about that, that's not what they're actually about. You mentioned about the meeting the government inspector. The government inspector has held 2 examination in public hearings, and they were open to the public, and they were advertised. Representatives from this community.
There were a lot of people there. There were lots of people. Hang on a minute. There were lots of people there.
Fighting people. Yeah, that was all.
That's not true. It's 7:25. We're finishing in. I want to bring a couple more people in and try and be democratic. There was a lady.
Democratic?
My name's Carol Hines and I live on the junction of Lickers Lane in India Road. And when you mention traffic, thank you, because I live on the junction of Lickers Lane on Windsor Road. I've had my house for sale now for the last 12 months. The reason being the traffic. The comments I'm getting back, the feedback, the traffic, there's too much traffic, too much noise, and they don't want to buy my house. So basically, you're telling me that's not going to have an impact on Whiston Village. You seem to be forgetting it. It's a village. It's not a town. It's a village. Now, I came into Whiston Village years back, and I was a very lucky person to be welcomed into Whiston Village, because I was from Hyden, and it was a no-no to come from Hyden to Whiston Village, because they're all families had houses in Whiston. It's not like that today. And also, the families in Whiston can't afford the houses in Whiston because there's no jobs. You're saying, by building these houses, that you're going to be bringing employment in. You said that when you built Tesco. You built houses. Half of them houses are rented. They're not owned, they're rented. All paid for by Social Security half the time, right? You've also got on the opposite side of Tesco, land. You've built office blocks for this so-called businesses, office blocks stand empty. Right, you've got them everywhere, these office blocks, in our area, Knowsley, whatever council you want to call yourselves. Right, but you still want to take Greenbelt. I understand people need houses, but Greenbelt is the last port of call that you go to. Because if you talk about nature reserves, Greenbelt, all Greenbelt is nature reserve. Right? You want here, you call yourself councillors. Councillors, how many times have you been up my drive? How many times have you been
Every time I go there, you chase me away.
Have you ever mentioned to me that the council want to take Greenbelt land up? No, you haven't.
It's only turned up in the last year, this issue.
Yeah. Do you know what I found out?
You asked me a question and I answered it. I've been up your drive several times and every time I go there, I get a load of abuse on it.
Well, that's why there's a load of traffic. I said, another thing you said. You said you let people of Whiston know. You let people of Whiston know. I've lived in Whiston for 40 odd years. Guess how I knew? My local co-op, there was a petition up, Jason Brown put a petition up in the co-op, and that was the first time I heard about any of this. The next time I heard, I got a plan passed through the door, and I live facing the football field where this so-called Greenbelt land is supposed to go. Right? So you tell me where my lessons went, and where my notification went. I'm making an answer.
I didn't say there weren't going to be any transport impacts. I said that the transport impacts would have to be mitigated by the development. So there would have to be improvements made to the transport infrastructure in order to actually take the additional transport impacts that there will be. So I'm not saying there won't be any, I'm saying that they would have to actually make improvements in order to actually manage those. In relation to the Greenbelt, you're absolutely right, it is the last port of call. We have tried every other development site in the area. So it is, we have no other land, Brownfield land available to actually put forward to the government. When we did put that forward, they didn't actually count that evidence. And I think I was going to say, I think probably a fundamental point that we haven't covered tonight, that's probably an important one to make, is that the council do not own this land. This land is owned by individuals, individuals or companies, and those individuals and companies, they put evidence forward as part of the local examination hearings, and they put strong evidence forward fighting for that land to be brought out of the Greenbelt, not just because the council is there working in order to protect it.
7:30 now. The man at the back, and this is probably the last question. The man in the white shirt and his hand up for quite a while.
I'd just like to raise 2 points. First is actually addressed to yourself. When you turn around and said it was to do with the coalition government, let's not take it down into a party political broadcast here, because the Under-Secretary of State, a guy called Eric Pickles, has actually expressed his deep concern at the amount of Greenbelt land that is being now used for housing. And that was in an article in the Daily Telegraph on October the 4th this month. So don't go down the line of blaming the Conservatives and the Liberals or anybody else, because they are actually against and very concerned at the amount of houses being built on Greenbelt land. And they said it needs to be under exceptional circumstances. Okay? Not special needs, exceptional circumstances. That's my first point. My second point is this, that maybe you don't know, or maybe some of you weren't in a public inquiry in 2005 regarding the bypass of the M57 onto the M62, which has now affected everybody in Whiston. And at the time, the chair of that meeting, that public inquiry, who was outside of Liverpool, from outside Liverpool, said we didn't think it would be a measurable impact on the local vicinity. Now, anybody who has a car and tries to get onto the M57 to go northbound to Kerry, or onto the M62 to go absolute nightmare to get round that roundabout. And that is the only road out of Whiston. So, I'd say to the chair of Whiston Parish Council, if you want to do something like me, because I travel 57,000 miles a year on business all over the UK, travelling from Whiston because there are no local jobs suitable for me, then you tell me when I'm stuck on that roundabout for half an hour every morning that it's not a pinch point, that it isn't a problem, and that you find that acceptable, because I don't. Thank you.
What I'm saying is I agree with you entirely. Talking roundabout is a nightmare, and I go on it myself, so I'm not going to disagree with you. With regards to the political points, the officers cannot make political points. You have 3 councillors here who can make political points, and what we are saying is that the decision to release this land was forced upon Knowsley Council by the coalition government. They are the enemies here, not Knowsley Council.
And you fought against it. Any Labour councillor...
Can we vote against planning applications? Yes. Hang on. Can you sit down, please? Can you sit down? Just an answer. On a planning application, we have permission to vote against the leadership.
No, you don't.
Yes, we do.
No, you don't. Excuse me, I can tell you now, run round, if anyone votes against selling the Greenbelt or anything else, he gets suspended and sacked.
That's
That's
not
the
true.
democracy they're talking about.
Can I ask you to sit down, please? It's not a problem. We're not going to put discussion in here. Okay. We've had the time allocated. Everyone's had their turn. I'm going to close the meeting. Health and safety reasons dictate that we must close the meeting at 7:30.